G'day everyone, it's SDS SuperCoach providing SuperCoach content for you. I'm here to present the rookie guide for round one. So something a bit different I'm doing this year. I haven't done this before where I get a special guest and we're going to rank rookies at this current stage and we'll update it next week. But joining me for this is JG from the SuperCoach Hub. JG, how are we going, my man?
I'm good. I'm good and keen to talk some super coach. Obviously, round one's done and dusted. I think I got through pretty well. But yeah, just keen to build off this platform, and the rookies are going to be essential to it.
Of course, mate. And yeah, it should be an interesting talking point because we did get a lot of knowledge from round one, of course. But
Mm.
before we get started, we're also going to mention that there's going to be three categories: must have, watch slash wait, and avoid slash sell. So that's how we're going to sort of categorize it. I'm not going to lie, I only did a must have. The rest is going to be off the brain. So um, best of luck to me there. But before we get started, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Stephen DW Smith and also on TikTok at SDS underscore supercoach. JG, where can the people find you on the socials?
Just on Twitter at JG_SC Hub, and you can see the dribble that I tweet every now and then.
And make sure you guys tune in into the Super Coach Hub. That's I listen to that every now and then. It's always a good banter, especially with Scoble running amok. So um, you have to keep quite ahead to get him in control. That's for sure, JG.
Oh, absolutely. He's a piece of work, that guy.
All right, let's get involved, shall we? So let's talk about some of the must-have rookies. So, for me, in defense, I don't know if you've gone by defense, mid, or forward, or whatever the case may be. So, as you guys can tell, the planning from me has been fantastic as always. For the back line, my must-have defender rookies for round one so far are Luke Trainer and Zach Reed.
And I've got the exact same too.
Yeah,
And
nice.
I'm pretty sure for similar reasons as well, most likely.
Well, for me, Zach Reed's going to be a little bit of a slow burn. I do think he has the potential to have
Yep.
quite the spike score once, which can get his cash gen flowing. But I think the main appeal here is the job security. I don't think there's any sub risk potential, especially short term with Ridley out with the unfortunate concussion. And he's just a guy that we know can just play on field every week. So I've got those two, and then Luke Trainer, of course, you've got. I think there's scope for him to do better than that 50. I know it was
Yeah.
a 50, but he looked fantastic, I thought, JG. Just the little things he did so well. It looks so calm as a debutant. How do you read those two?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I agree with your comments around Zach Reed being a slow burn, but as an Essendon fan, I can say that his job security is arguably the best of any rookie that we've got on any line. Um, his body is the issue that needs to be said. But if he stays fit, and it is a big if on previous years, he's going to play every single week. I think you can see a bit more than those 40s. Like, it's a very limited sample size, but he played a practice game against Geelong last year, practice game against Geelong this year. Both those games were 70 plus Supercoach scores. So he is a good kick. I think he looked a bit shaky against Hawthorn, but Hawthorn had so many small forwards. I think he was playing on trial most of the game, but it was a mismatch for the lineup that Essendon brought out there. Having Mackay, Reid, Ridley, Pryor, all 190 centimeters plus with your forward line was a recipe for disaster. It's a bit different against Adelaide this week. So yeah, slow burn, but I think he's an absolute lock, especially with the options we've actually got down there in the back line. And as for Trainer, I agree with you. Particularly his last quarter, he looked so composed. I think he was a big influence in getting that win across the line for the Tigers, which was a joy to watch. I'm a serial Carlton hater. Um, but yeah, I think I agree with you as well that he can grow on that 50 score. He's an elite intercept marker in his draft year, only slid due to concussion issues, which he looks so far touch wood to be over. So yeah, I'm hoping that a game or two under his belt, he can start to progress those scores to 60s, 70s for us.
Yeah, absolutely. If Luke Trainer wasn't cramping, he was making big, strong plays in the last quarter, and then Zach Reed as well.
Yep.
I don't think the conditions suited him particularly well in the
Nah.
second half as well. So that just made it hard. And then first game back, he's just had such a difficult run on the park. Hopefully for your Bombers, he can just finally get a full run of things, and you guys
Mm.
definitely need him down back when he's healthy. So I think he's a great addition for the Bombers this year. Fingers crossed. In the
Yep.
midfield, so I've got four here. I've got not Will Ashcroft, maybe a couple of years ago. Levi Ashcroft, Nathan O'Driscoll, Xavier Lindsay, and Mitch Nevitt as my four must-haves before price changes. How about you, mate?
Yeah, well, excluding DPP, which I'm sure we'll get to in the forward line later, I've actually got only Nevitt and Levi for now. Um, in that's just because I don't have Lindsay or O'Driscoll yet, and I think with O'Driscoll, I kind of want to watch him one more game with that mid role. Just they've got Fife to come in, they've got Young to come in. Obviously, if it's another 80 to 70 plus score, then you've got to get him. But I think at that 198K price tag, I just want one more look just to be absolutely certain. Because it is a bit to pay. But yeah, on the weekend he had 68% CBAs. So I don't think it's going to be that high, obviously, when those two players come back, and even Shea Bolton could get some CBAs and then push forward after the centre bounce. And in terms of Lindsay, just we've seen how volatile that wing role can be. I mean, you look at Davidson; he had 22 disposals in a half in the practice game, and then comes out round one, scores 39. And to be honest, it wouldn't surprise me if he can score a 70 plus this week against Collingwood. It's just that role. We saw it with Camperelli as well. Had a pretty good first half against Richmond and then faded as the game went on. In saying that, though, I actually looked at Caleb Windsor last year, who I think is the guy to look at in terms of a rookie Melbourne winger. And last year he started at 180K, so he started 20K more than Lindsay, and he ended up averaging 60, and he ended up making a top of 172K, which you would absolutely take at Lindsay's price. So he's borderline must have for me, but he's just out of that range at the moment. But I'd be interested in your thoughts into why you see him as a must have.
Nah, you brought up some good points, and I think there's a chance it could be a much different story, and with it being at Marvel, that game
Mm.
where don't exactly know the dimensions, but I'm pretty sure the MCG is a lot wider for wingers to work with. So, not gonna lie, I was listening to the Supercoach Swordplay podcast on the drive home, and Janeth, I don't remember what you said, mate, but um, he just brought up all these great things about Xavier Lindsay that I can't remember off the top of my head, but he just brought up such a good case as to why, and that was also part of the reason that good old Janeth, the
You're
great
smart,
man.
man.
Oh, he's one of my favorites ever to listen to when it comes to Supercoach. Just got such a great mind for the game. So if there's any rookies out there that want to learn a bit about Supercoach, just listen to Janeth. The way he talks is just outstanding. But yeah, back to Xavier
Mm.
Lindsay. Yeah, so a lot of the reasons Janeth brought out, but I thought also because I was pretty hot on him a bit early, where there's a bit of love for me with Xavier Lindsay. I think part of the reason was he was on a modified program in December, January. So I think he was coming off a PCL injury from his draft year. And then he didn't exactly go crazy in the preseason, but I just know the talent was there. And part of the reason as well is because they were actually training him half back originally, and now they've moved him back onto the wing. So I do think Xavier Lindsay's potential. He's got a really good left boot, which does help his scoring as
Mm.
well. And Melbourne do play games at the MCG, so I do think games at the G will be a lot easier for him. I think Melbourne play like what 15 games at the G or something each year, and I know we probably only need him for the first 12, 13 weeks, but he just seems like a supreme talent, and I'm pretty bullish on him. So it's not a great reasoning, but I just have a lot of faith in him being the one. So um, and then O'Driscoll, that makes perfect sense. Hayden Young's coming back round 4. Um, I think I think it's going to be tough for some people to just get all these higher price mid rookies in together at once. And if you can find
Hmm.
a way to do that, you're in a great position. I think there will be one that people will have to go, you know what, I just can't break up the team to settle. But if I can do it, I will. So yeah, and just imagine if Levi Ashcroft is sub on Sunday. Just the carnage. Well, people would just
Yeah.
pivot to Lindsay, I would have thought, when he plays a couple of
Yeah.
hours later.
Yeah, well, I'm so annoyed about the Ashcroft one because I
Yeah.
was out down at the Mornington Peninsula when that team got named. Had no idea Charlie Cameron was out. Levi wasn't going to be the sub because I absolutely would have started him and I would have fielded him over Finn O'Sullivan, who I had on field, which wasn't great. But I think he is an absolute must-have rookie if he's not sub this weekend, and I don't think he will be with the injuries to Lohman and Starcevic, and they copped a bit of carnage, the Lions on the
Yeah.
weekend. But yeah, I was looking at. I've already seen Brisbane's run. That's a big factor in why I started Neil. But in the first 9 games, in particular the first three, Ashcroft has Eagles, Tigers, Saints, and North. So there's potentially a lot of spike games in there for a rookie in the first 9 games. He could honestly make 200K, maybe even more, and average near on 80.
Yeah. With that Brisbane run, you'd almost think that they didn't win the flag to start the year.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I can't fathom how they get that run, but here we are, unfortunately.
Must be an absolute bastard run home for them, unfortunately. So that's the only way I
Yeah.
could think about it. But yeah, yeah, no, you've probably thought of a more um got more of a list where even if a situation goes bad with like a Nevitt or an Ashcroft, you still would like to have them in as a must-have. So I do like that. I think we didn't really touch on Mitch Nevitt that much, but I think the
Hmm.
CBAs looked fantastic for him. I know there was a little bit of wing time in there, and I do expect that to come. But
Yeah.
with Dangerfield moving forward, with Bailey Smith seeming more as a winger,
Hmm.
it really opens up the opportunity for Nevitt, which heading into the season we didn't necessarily, I don't think we expected. I think we just thought that he would be wing, probably best 22, but on the wing and at risk of Chris Scott being a bastard. But fortunately, it does seem like there's a role that's opened up, and I think a good sign for for Mitch Nevitt is that he worked his way into the game, and that's a sign of why we like to go for some of these more mature age rookies. They can build their way into the game even more, and I saw that out of Mitch Nevitt. The tank looked very good. It does seem like a breakout year for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And at that age of, I think he's 22, that's kind of when these players start to get into their careers a little bit. And we've seen so many years now where Geelong just every single year seemed to give us a rookie that we weren't maybe expecting. I think this year we expected never a little bit, but you look back at the previous years and we got like Brad Close out of nowhere. We got Oliver Dempsey out of nowhere. A few that aren't coming to my head at the moment, but we've consistently been able to get some decent rookies from Geelong. And I think too, I know they absolutely smacked Fremantle, but to have 11 tackles and 21 touches against that Fremantle midfield, it's pretty impressive, I think. And you know, it, I would be absolutely stunned if he was dropped or made sub after an 11 tackle effort. Like that's the defensive pressure that I think can win over some coaches, particularly Chris Scott. I think he values that pretty highly. So to pair up his 20 touches with that much defensive pressure and tackles, I think it would be going pretty well for him to keep his spot in that cat's side and hopefully make some money for us.
Absolutely. As we move into the ruck line, I think there's only one for me, and that's Harry
Mm.
Boyd. I don't know if you're the same.
Yeah, I'm the same, and I'm a bit confused because you know how at the end of that game, Rowan Marshall had the ice on the knee. Wasn't
Hmm.
on the injury list though, so I don't know if that was just a precaution. I'm assuming it is because he's not on the injury list. But the bad side of me was kind of hoping that might have been a 2 or 3 week injury, and Harry Boyd got a locked in number one rock spot. But I don't know. I still think that there's a chance that I don't know how far King is off. I know Mitch Owens isn't far away. I think there is still a chance that Boyd could be dropped at some point, and they play Marshall solely as the ruckman. But I think at the moment you can see 58.2% of the sides have it at the moment. I think that should be higher because in this current number one ruck role that he has, he's going to make a lot of money. I think.
Yeah, I mean, so King is 2 to 3 weeks away, um,
Yeah,
from the Saints injury report. Gee, Marshall just looked so not right. I
he didn't.
they seemed like they rushed him back a fair bit. It just he didn't look right, which I still think
Mm,
is actually a good sign for Boyd because they're gonna,
yeah,
from how I see it, they're gonna ease him into the season and just get the body rolling. Where Harry Boyd, I think can hold that number one ruck role. God, he's slow, but
he is, isn't he? Yeah,
oh, at
that's
that
one thing
height,
I noticed.
he's one of the
Yeah,
smallest rucks in the comp, and he's that slow. So maybe that's why it took him
yeah,
a fair bit of time to get a gig. But
yeah.
um, I don't. But scoring a 63 is not too bad against Riley O'Brien. I mean, I think it
Mm,
was 84% CBAs for him and like 16% for Marshall. But yeah,
mm.
I mean, I think he's a guy where, beloved Matty Flynn are to us. If like me, if he gets dropped, then
Yeah,
you can get Harry Boyd for a few weeks and then reassess. So
yeah,
I think he's a must-have rookie. 99K, that screams 200K minimum cash generation in my eyes. I mean, just even being a solo ruck can get you to 350K. So yeah,
absolutely.
it doesn't matter
It's
how good or bad you are, that role can just get you there just because of how much you're around the ball.
Yeah, I mean we've seen it recently with Briggs. I think he's the most recent example I can think of. Sweet kind of did it, but he did it sporadically, like games here and there. But even like I just saw, obviously as you were talking about, I just saw this week he's got Geelong. So Sam DeConning, I think that could be a spike score against him. He gives up a few points, Sam. He can score himself, obviously. He just showed on the weekend 109, but hopefully an 80 to 90 plus this weekend for Boyd against DeConning potentially.
Yeah, I think some of us super coaches out there, now that we've seen Harry Boyd really having a strong number one ruck case here, probably wish we had him at flex, not gonna lie. Probably a
Mm,
number one ruck that you'd rather have on field over a couple of these fraud rookies that we could have on offer. So as we move finally into the forward line, I've just got one here. And I know he scored poorly, but it's actually the third highest owned rookie. It's Sam Davidson still. I think you're spot on in
yeah,
the assessment where he's just going to have those spike games. And I think a game like Collingwood is a perfect game for him if the ball's on the right side. So I'm not opposed to anyone having him on field this week. I think there's a chance at a 70 plus here. So that's how I read it. Is Davidson your only one?
I didn't actually have Davidson. I think his job security is awesome. Obviously I own him as well. Uh, and I think he's borderline. I could have snuck him in there. I could have. I've actually got two others. DPP, Kako, which I don't know if you're expecting me to say that, but you know, coming off a 62 against Hawks, who I think are a top four side, your defense is probably one of your strong suits. He looked really dangerous. Only kicked the one goal, still got that 60 plus score. We saw how many goals he can kick when he's on against Geelong in the preseason game. And I just think he will be a slow burn. I'm pretty confident in that. But I just think that with that mid forward DPP, his job security is going to be as good as anyone.
Yeah.
as an Essendon fan, I cannot see him getting dropped for anyone.
No,
Even when Guelfi's back, he's
he'll
better
play
than
all
Gresham, who was
23.
sub. Yeah, and I think that's a big factor in why I've put him as a must-have. And the other one again, mid forward is actually Max Hall.
Oh,
I thought he
wow.
was really, yeah, I thought he was really, really impressive in a smashing against Adelaide. Like they got smashed. He had a few scoring shots early. I think he kicked two behinds before he kicked his first goal, and they were really early scoring shots as well. He looked pretty dangerous. Ended up with a 74, and I think he's going to have really good job security as well. Mature age, coming from Box Hill Hawks. I just think that that DPP can just be so handy, like Kako, and a 74 in a game where they got obliterated. I think he can be a pretty handy, potentially even on-field option.
No, that's actually not a that's actually a good shout there.
Hmm.
We'll see if Kako plays this week, actually, if you saw the
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
but
Hmm.
it didn't seem like anything too severe, so um
Yeah.
handy loophole. Um Potentially this week, and then he'll be back next week. And then Max Hall, I'm not a Box Hill advocate watcher, um, but I would notice that every time heading into the mid-season draft, just he would have the most disposals. Like he would be inside mid. I know it's a different role here at half forward, but he knows how to get the pill. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, we've seen Ross in the past give a lot of faith into these mature age recruits, so who are ready made and half forward role pushed up. I thought he looked very good. He's probably yeah. I'm teetering more towards a watch. Just need to see what happens again there. Um, but yeah, I think you make a very good point, JG. And so we got watch. We've got. I guess we can just run through the more popular ones, so we can talk about whether they're more of a watch or a potential sell, that sort of thing. So I guess guys that we haven't touched on, your boy Elijah Sardis.
Yeah.
Uh, I personally think he's a watch for one more week. I believe he's a Capricorn, actually, Elijah Sardis. Fun fact, but I believe he's, in my opinion, a watch for one more week.
Yeah, he's my boy, and it's breaking my heart seeing all these people trade him out. But the more I think about it, the more I think, gee, I think we might have to get rid of him next week if he puts in another lowish score. Obviously, if he scores another low score, he's got to go. But think with the opportunity he can score. Like this is a 50 off 57% time on ground and
Yeah,
18 disposals. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was 13 disposals in the second half. So he started really slow. If he can follow that second half form into the next game against Adelaide, which, it's decent midfield, but there are points there. I think we could potentially see Sardis's stocks go up a little bit. The only problem is just Darcy Parish. I think he's listed as 1 week now on the
yeah.
injury list. Um, is still to come in. Does that potentially push our Hobbs to a sub or out of the side in general? Because I think we should probably invest in Sardis more than Hobbs at the moment. I'm not too sure, but there are the warning signs there now for Sardis, especially with we mentioned before, your O'Driscolls, your Lindsays, your Ashcrofts, all these different options around that price point.
Yeah, and yeah, I think Hobbs might be cooked personally, but I still think
Mm,
there's I still think there's time in Sardis to develop him. And I mean, hopefully you guys can give him more of a run, considering how good of a preseason he had and how good he looked in the Dogs game in particular as well. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, hopefully for a lot of us super coaches, he can be a hold for the long term. As we
Yeah.
move on to Finn O'Sullivan and Lucas Camporeale, I don't know if you noticed that the commentators were calling him Camporeale. Um,
Oh.
yeah, well, I was listening to Channel 7, I guess, but uh,
Yeah.
Foss, it wasn't exactly an accumulative type for
Mm,
heading into the draft. I think his job security would be fantastic, but I guess there's questions on I guess why we went with him, knowing that he wasn't exactly the accumulative type. I guess it was a fallback option at Ashcroft, which then changed and all that. But I think he's, well, for non-owners, he's probably a watch, avoid teetering type. I think there'll be more priorities there. I think Camporeale is a watch, and I think he could go well again. And it's going to be wet weather footy tomorrow night, so keep a massive eye on that. If the ball can go his way, there'll be a lot of hack kicks and all that. But yeah, I think they're both watches, JG.
Yeah, I agree. If you Finn O'Sullivan, he's the one that annoys the hell out of me. I'm a pretty keen draft watcher. I like to track the draftees. I find it interesting. I wish it was a little bit like American college, where it's really well known over there, but it isn't. And yeah, I watched O'Sullivan, pretty familiar with him, and I knew he wasn't an accumulator, and I still got sucked into that pick. I think more so because I decided to buy into that half-back talk,
Yeah,
against West
same.
Coast. Yeah, the second half against West Coast, he actually played that half-back role. I think he scored a score in the 90s, high 90s,
Yeah.
in that game. And yeah, I saw that he was in the week leading up to round one training at halfback. And that game, I saw a lot of wing time. And I'll admit, I had Collingwood and Port on my TV and this game on the laptop, and I was watching here and there. But every time I seemed to see him, he was on the wing. And yeah, Camperelli, same role, but for what's that? Nearly 80 over 80K difference. So I'm kind of happy if Camperelli's in that wing role at that price. And I don't know if you noticed, but he's been named on field as well tomorrow night, which is always
Yeah,
kind
that
of
relieving.
kind of an indicator for rookies. Yeah. But I think Camperelli is, if he pushes out another 60 plus score, I know he scored 56, he is near on a must have just because of that price point.
Yeah, it's 113K. I mean, it's the new 117, isn't it now, due to the
Yeah, yeah,
fluctuation. So that's even better for us. So 113K. I mean, I personally think he's taken Ollie Holland's role where Hollands has moved half back. So I actually think
yeah,
his job security is really good and really promising.
yeah,
So massive watch on those two. As we move into the next few, look, I guess from this list here, I would say Leakers an avoid. I would say
yeah.
Ben Patton seems to be an avoid at the minute. I think the
Mm,
job security is a bit shaky now. Um, Connor Stone, if you didn't start him, I almost just wouldn't bother. I'd just prefer to get a Corey Warner personally. I think he'll be a better cash generator than Stone. Power Pepper's a definite avoid.
mm.
But Elijah Hewitt is probably the only one here that I'd consider a watch besides the others that we've talked about.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Leake and Stone are definitely most likely going to get dropped after this bye. Um, Leake just purely because they got McMullen and Thomas coming off those suspensions. And Kingsley actually said before opening a round game that if they weren't suspended off summer training form, they'd both play.
Yep.
So they're similar positions to Leake in that midfield role. And then different positions, but they've also got to bring Stringer and Hogan into that team. So there's a bit of movement for that genius side, and I just think Leake and Stone could be the ones that make way with a little bit of a restructure. Hewitt, that forward mid DPP, I spoke about how handy it can be. A 50, and I think he's got a bit of growth in that score. My only concern and why I think he's a watch is just because how bad his body is. He's, I
Yeah.
think, year three now, has barely gone to the park, and this preseason even like he got managed in the second practice game, managed in light duties at training leading up to round one to the point where I actually left him out because I thought he was going to be subbed to start or subbed off, but got the full game. No idea how he pulled up, and nearly 50% of the competition have him, so he's definitely going to have to be a watch. But yeah, that list is pretty bare. And Power Pepper, absolute avoid. I can't believe I picked him. And Haddon with Cunningham and Mills only maximum 3 weeks away, I think he's going to get dropped as well, particularly after being subbed off last game, unfortunately.
Well, they'll have more of a look on Riley Boss.
Yeah.
just a final one because as you guys know, I don't pay for Zoom. Um, because of I want to save my money, so we only get 40-minute meetings. Just one final question before we let you go, mate. How do
Mhm.
you I'm personally of not going bias at this stage, just purely due to them having the
Mm.
last game. What if he's sub
Yep.
again? Then you're stuck
Yeah,
in a
stuffed.
way. So
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of a risk, but he does look fantastic if he can avoid that green vest.
Yeah, well, I think if you have a leak, I think you might get dropped. If you have a pattern, I think you could get dropped. They're two guys that you could potentially use as a loop for this round. If you
Yeah.
know, you got your Priors, your trainers, your Zach Reeds. Some might have O'Connell, some might have O'Sullivan. They're guys that you can actually loop with the league on the buy, and if Patton gets dropped. Um, and you don't want to be trading Patton to Bias only for Bias to play 1 or 2 weeks and then get dropped again without a price rise, or
Yeah.
maybe one price rise. So yeah, with the buy, I think it's the safe and logical thing to do is just get one more look at Bias, reassess after his buy. I'm sure that someone would have got dropped by then in the back line that you need to go to. So yeah, just a wait on Bias, I reckon.
Agree, JG. If there's any more rookie questions that you guys have, leave in the comments down below. Me and JG will respond to you about that. But JG, thank you so much for jumping on the channel, mate. Really do appreciate it. I'm sure I'll get you back once again.
No worries. It's been a pleasure. I was pretty happy when I saw you asked me to come on. I said pre-pod, I actually do watch your videos quite a bit, have them in the background going to work or even when I'm tinkering with my own side. So yeah, it's been a pleasure to come on.
Nah, thank you, mate. I appreciate all the supporters and as well as you guys. Part of the reason why I still do is because of all the support. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.